This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Yes, it's true. The handgun roster is dead. Okay, it's not completely dead, but we got a great victory today, and it's on its way to being killed dead. I've got Chuck Michelle with me. We're going to talk about it here in just a second. I want to remind you, please do check me out in these other locations because sometimes YouTube deletes a video. Check out our social media. We've added Instagram to that list, and we'll be adding others. And don't forget the GunGuyTV Firearms podcast. You'll find it on your favorite podcast player and on Rumble. You can find the video version there. All right, let's go talk to Chuck. Chuck, this is a great day. This is an absolutely astounding day. I keep telling people we're winning, we're winning. And they look at me and go, no, we're not, we're losing. Well, today, baby, it's V for Victory Day.
It's a W. W to.
It's a serious win. I love it. Okay, so you got to tell us what happened. The roster is at least temporarily, hopefully dead or on its way out. So you tell me the details.
I believe it's on its way out. The roster for years has limited the ability for folks to buy a handgun that's appropriate for their individual needs because the list has been frozen for a decade. And then when they it was very difficult to get a gun on the list. And then they added, just to make it harder, they added a loaded chamber indicator requirement, a magazine disconnect requirement, and then just to make it impossible to get any more guns on the list, they added a microstamping requirement, which no manufacturer could do. So the number of handguns that were available particularly pistols that were available in a retailer's gun cabinet went from like a couple of thousand to basically like 200. There were some different finishes and coatings, but essentially you had your choice of about 200 models of handgun. And that obviously is a lot less handguns that are on the market. Not only that, the latest, greatest, and safest handguns were not able to get on the roster of handguns that could be sold in the state because they didn't have microstamping or the loaded chamber indicator or the magazine disconnect. So Californians were being deprived of the latest, greatest, and safest handgun models to be able to access those for a long, long time. So the CRPA and Michelle and Associates challenged this this requirement using that rationing, the new test from Bruin, from the Bruin case that came out of the United States Supreme Court last June, and we sought a preliminary injunction in United States District Court. And today we got our ruling on our injunction, and the judge granted that injunction, found that the roster, the requirements, at least for microstamping, loaded chamber indicator, and magazine disconnect, were unconstitutional. So this is a fantastic win. Now the state's going to appeal, obviously, but in the meantime, this is one of what I hope will be a series of big post-Bruin wins, striking down some of the useless, ill-conceived gun control laws that California has been pushing down our throats and the throats of law-abiding gun owners for decades now, none of which make us any safer, but all of which are designed to make it harder and harder and harder to buy a gun. In this case, a gun of a particular size or with a particular grip or with a particular sight picture, or different things that people needed for their individual circumstances. That choice was taken away. And if we can hold on to this win on appeal, unfortunately the fight's not over, but this is a great start. All those choices, all those guns will be back in your local retailer's display case, and you'll be able to get a gun that's right for you.
So, as a practical matter, at this moment, there's a preliminary injunction, but the state's going to appeal. Does that mean that the law cannot be enforced during the appeal, or how does that work?
No, the judge gave the state, he knew they were going to appeal, so he put his injunction would go into effect in 14 days. They will appeal before then. And then they will ask the Ninth Circuit, and we'll have to oppose the Ninth Circuit granting it, but they'll ask the Ninth Circuit to stay his ruling while the case is litigated on appeal. And they're probably going to do that, given the Ninth Circuit, but depending on what judges we get to answer that question. So this is going to be a fight right out of the gates in the Ninth Circuit, but we're ready for it. And if we keep getting support from folks, keep donating to the CRPA, keep supporting the CRPA, join the CRPA, help us hold on to this win and a number of other wins that we hope are coming soon on the ammunition background check, on assault weapons, on the standard capacity magazine ban. All of those decisions should be coming down really any day now, and we're anticipating good results in those as well.
And those are all sitting with Judge Benitez, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, so we can...
This was not Judge Benitez. This was a different judge.
Right, but we've seen Judge Benitez's rulings before, so we can be relatively confident that they'll go our way, I think, with the other ones.
Yes, I mean, the state obviously fights tooth and nail. This is scorched earth litigation. They don't fight any harder than this to hold on to these, Gavin Newsom's wish list of gun bans, because this is his, narrative. He gets out there and scares people and hates the gun culture, what he calls it, which is, to me, those are my peeps, who respect the right to keep and bear arms, respect the freedom that goes along with the Second Amendment, and want to be able to choose a firearm as the most effective tool to defend themselves and their families, and for hunting and sport shooting and all other lawful purposes. I mean, there's a lot of shooting sports in this state, and CRPA is out there promoting those as well for women, juniors, disabled shooters. We have all kinds of different programs to get people out at the range pulling triggers and having fun and discovering how much fun the shooting sports can be. But for today, we at least are well on our way down the road to restore the right to get a handgun that suits your individual needs in the state of California.
Well, and I want to clarify, by the way, I've got my CRPA hat on, just as symbolic support. But I want to clarify that this is not the win. This is not a complete win yet, but this is a serious win in the battle moving forward, because the state is going to appeal it, and the battle, obviously we got to complete the case and finish it. But, a few years ago, before Bruin, we might not have gotten this far. We might have gotten tossed before we got this far. So this is a huge step forward, is it not?
It's a huge step forward. And I think it's one of the first post-Bruin rulings on something this significant. There's litigation going on about sensitive places. That was actually argued in the Second Circuit today on the Antoniuk case. There's litigation going on in Illinois about semi-auto bans and standard capacity magazine bans. There's Oregon. There's, basically what's happened is since Bruin, all the sore loser legislatures in blue states and battleground states are trying to pass everything they can think of, because they're vindictive now. They're mad about what the Supreme Court did. They don't like the Second Amendment. They don't want people to be able to choose to own a firearm, and they're trying to red tape the right to death. And so there's fights going on all across the country, but this is, I think, maybe the first big win. Antoniuk was a big one in New York State on sensitive places where your CCW is or is not valid. But this is I think the first big one, at least in California, to set the standard where it's supposed to be under Bruin, as opposed to under the sort of interest balancing test that they did, where the state can say, oh, this is going to make us safer, and the courts were reluctant to question the state's wisdom on that. So a lot of things got upheld, particularly in the Ninth Circuit. But I think this is the beginning, or part of the beginning, of a Second Amendment reckoning that courts are going to have to come to terms with, and that gun owners and Second Amendment supporters are going to benefit from.
Well, and Chuck, I want to point out something. For years, you and I have said, as well as Rick and everybody else, we've all been saying it. Sam has been saying it, that as California goes, so goes the rest of the nation. And then California either affects or infects the rest of the nation. But now, guess what? The anti-gunners have enjoyed that fact for quite a while. But that is now flipped on its ear. Because now, as California goes, so does the rest of the nation. But in a very positive way, as we start to knock these down, isn't that going to set precedent for the rest of the country?
Yes, and it's funny. There were states, in several state legislatures, including Illinois, there were roster bans pending, and are roster bans pending. And so this case, now those legislative advocates for gun rights organizations will be able to go into those legislatures and say, you can't pass this, and here's the authority that tells you so. And we'll see what they do. They'll probably try and pass it anyway. But yes, each of these cases becomes legal precedent for the next case. So we're looking at Antoniuk in New York as precedent to fight what California is going to try and do. Make it impossible to get a CCW, and then if you get a permit to carry a firearm in public, they will make it useless in so many quote-unquote sensitive areas that you can't drive across town without breaking the law. But we'll be able to use that precedent. So all of this is national precedent. When you win in one state, you can use it in another state, if not as mandatory authority, then at least as persuasive authority. A lot of it is dependent on how well-reasoned the opinions are. But so far,
so good.
When they faithfully apply Bruin, and the test that it laid out there, the historical analog test or the common use test, we win.
I want to ask you a question about that whole sensitive place thing since I got you. Because every time I teach a concealed carry course, it comes up. SB 918 you guys killed it between you and Gun Owners of California.
Travis and Sam Paredes at Gun Owners of California and Rick Travis at CRPA.
That's it.
Knocked that out at 2 o'clock in the morning and killed it with by one vote.
And I want to just point out again the organizations that killed it, because a lot of people want to take credit for that. That was Rick Travis from the California Rifle and Pistol Association and Sam Paredes from Gun Owners of California. So if you're watching this
in the Capitol in the wee
hours of the morning. So now the legislature has retreaded that same bill and called it SB2, but the difference my understanding is the difference this time is it's not an emergency provision.
Right.
So an emergency provision, if the governor signs it, becomes law like that. Right. And they need 2/3 vote. With one that isn't an emergency provision, they don't need 2/3 vote, but it doesn't become law until January of the following year. So if they pass it, it doesn't become law until January 2024. And in the meantime, you and your law firm are ready to smack it down, are you not?
We have the lawsuit complaint written for 918. We're just going to change the numbers. The day that Gavin Newsom signs this bill, we will drop our lawsuit and probably pass it out at his press conference. This is about our future, our children's future, our freedoms, our rights, the style of government we're going to have. There's a battle for America's soul going on right now with the woke movement and the cancel culture and all that stuff. And the Second Amendment really is the tip of the spear. The government, historically, governments have disarmed people, the citizenry, before they take more power and become tyrannical. And it can happen. It happens. It happens in modern times. So the Second Amendment is the ultimate check on that. There's a quote misattributed to George Washington. He called one of the founding fathers called the Second Amendment liberty's teeth, and that's pretty much sums it up right there.
Is there anything we haven't talked about with regard to this that we need to, or anything else going on in California?
No, I think we're covered on the roster, but keep your camera ready for when the next wind comes down, which will probably be any time now, from San Diego District Court.
I'm looking forward to it. Chuck, thanks for coming on so quickly. I do appreciate it. Have a great week.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for getting the word out.
Anytime. Take care. Thank you very much for watching the interview. I do appreciate it. Thank you very much for all of your support of me. I really do appreciate that as well. Again, I ask you to support the California Rifle and Pistol Association and Gun Owners of California, regardless of where you are in the country, because what California does or doesn't do, the victories we have here are going to affect the rest of the country. We just talked about that. For decades, it's been the other way around. Every nasty thing they did in California affected the rest of the country. Well, now we've got the wind at our back, and we're getting the victories. So we've got to continue that momentum. Make sure you're supporting those organizations and supporting the fights in these restrictive states. Thank you again for all of your support. Have a great week, and wherever you go, whatever you do, stay safe.